Good afternoon, members. We now start the 20th session of the special meeting of the Finance Committee. For members who would like to speak, please request to speak button. I just want to remind members that all questions to be asked have to be directly related to the estimates. If you would like to follow up on any written replies from the administration, please quote the reply serial number in the top right-hand corner, say for example EDB 001. To facilitate our meeting, the Secretariat has designed a new computer interface this year so that members and public officers may easily retrieve the written replies from the desktop computers. And the reply will also be displayed on the screen in the conference room. If there isn't sufficient time, members may also ask supplementary questions in writing. Please fill out the form in front of you and please have it submitted to the Secretariat before the close of business today. The administration will try its best to make a reply before the 24th of April when we hold the third meeting for the budget and the estimates. I'd like to welcome the Secretary for Education and please and I also welcome your team. Please give us a brief introduction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The government has all along been investing heavily in education for the purpose of nurturing human capital, thereby facilitating social mobility and sustaining the development of Hong Kong. In 2013 to 14, the total provision for education is $76.9 billion, of which $63 billion is for the recurrent expenditure, which accounts for more than one-fifth of the total recurrent government expenditure. Education is the largest spending area of the government's total expenditure. At a time when there is a change in the demographic structure of Hong Kong with a declining student population and a growing elderly population, it is even more important for us to nurture our new generation to meet future challenges. Take secondary school education as an example. In spite of the continuous decline in student population, we have been increasing our investment in students. In 2013 to 14, the unit cost per secondary student is 8.8% higher than that of last year. The unit cost per primary student has also increased by 3.8%. I will highlight a number of new initiatives in the coming year. First of all, upgrading the language proficiency. In 2013 to 14, we'll inject $5 billion into the language fund to promote biliteracy and trilingualism among our people. The proposed injection of $5 billion into the language fund will serve as seed money to generate a more stable return for the fund. To facilitate its relatively longer-term diversified planning, we'll invite the Standing Committee on the Language Education and Research to put forward specific proposals. The second area is the nurturing of distinguished teachers. We do have a lot of local scholarship funds. Say, for example, yesterday we spent $108 million to award 3,700 scholarships to our tertiary students, both publicly funded programs and self-financing programs. We need a quality teaching force, and therefore we would like to inject an additional $480 million into the Hong Kong SAR Government Scholarship Fund, GSF, to set up scholarships for outstanding local students to take degree courses or teacher training programs in prestigious universities outside Hong Kong. They must undertake to teach in Hong Kong upon graduation for at least 2 years or a period equivalent to the duration of receiving the scholarships. Whichever is longer, it is expected that about 20 scholarships will be awarded each year, so about 80 in total for 4 years. Since the number of scholarships is limited, priority will be given to those who study in programs under specific specialized areas. At present, the specific specialized areas are English language and early childhood education. The EDB will revise the specific specialized areas depending on the needs and circumstances in the future. The third area, which is also important to Hong Kong, is the need to upgrade our qualifications training. We hope that people can learn a skill that will be useful. We propose to allocate $10 million per year starting from the next financial year to support the industry training advisory committees set up under the qualifications framework to launch new initiatives to enhance the knowledge, skills, and exposure of workers in the industries so as to further increase their competitiveness in the labor market. These include introducing award schemes for outstanding practitioners to engage in learning activities in different places around the world. And then we need to render support to students with special education needs. As stated in the paper, we are going to allocate $12 million to the Vocational Training Council each year to purchase equipment and learning aids for students with special education needs, providing them with psychological and student counseling services and enhancing the support for teaching and learning. In addition, we will be making injections and in fact $20 million each into the Government Scholarship Fund and the Self-Financing Post-Secondary Education Fund to establish scholarships to give recognition to deserving tertiary students with SEN. And the many tertiary students have said that they are under a lot of pressure since they have to repay their student loan upon graduation. So for the new financial year, we say that students have the option to start repaying the student loans 1 year after graduation. Enhancement to kindergarten education. Just last week, we announced the establishment of a dedicated committee on free kindergarten education. And in fact, this is to follow up on the pledge made in the Chief Executive's election manifesto and the policy address. So we'd like to study how to practically implement free kindergarten education. And we would like to see it completed in 2 years' time. But it doesn't mean that KG education will stay put during the same period. When something urgent emerges, we'll deal with it urgently and we will carry out an in-depth study. We understand that in the interim, the relevant sector will be concerned and worried. Therefore, we propose that in the year 2013 to 14, all kindergartens under the pre-primary education voucher scheme will be given an additional one-off grant so that the KGs concerned can make use of this grant to improve their teaching resources, environment, and facilities. A total provision of some $160 million will be involved. We've also included the support for non-Chinese taking NCS students in learning Chinese. And we've also mentioned integrated education. And in fact, we have already included the details in my speech. I don't want to go into the details now. So, Mr. Chairman, my colleagues and I will be happy to answer questions from members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, now we have over 20 members. But then this session will end by 5:30. I believe that some other members will join this queue. So 4 minutes each. I'll be very strict. When your time is up, I hope members and public officers will stop speaking. I understand that members would like me to read out the names of the members. So I'll tell you: Wong Kwok Hing, Yip Kok Kim, Gary Fan, Regina Yip, Kenneth Chen, Kwok Ka Ki, Ma Fong Kwok, Tam Yu Chung, Michael Tian, Priscilla Leung, Helena Wong, Chen Chi Chun, Sin Chung Kai, Albert Ho, Frankie Yip, Martin Liu, Yip Kin Yun, Claudia Mo, Lam Tai Fai, and Wong Yok Man. Mr. Wong Kwok Hing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, 250. That's about early childhood education. A question for the Secretary. Yes, a few days ago, the administration announced the establishment of the committee to study free KG education. But then the KG teachers have a wide range of salary, $70,000 to $7,000, when compared with $30 an hour, which is the statutory minimum wage to be introduced on the 1st of May this year. So you can see that there's polarization between the top earners and the lowest rank. Yes, a dedicated committee has been set up, but then I want to know whether the administration will be making preparations for and studying the matter about introducing a salary scale for the KG teachers, so the KG teachers can have their concerns about their salary being addressed. So, Secretary, what preparations have you made? This is my first question. Another question is, even if the committee can come up with some recommendations in the next year or two, but we can understand that for KG education, if we really want to have 15 years free education in terms of teacher qualification, scale of operation, mode of operation, among other things, and including school premises and rent, have to be improved. Yes, the administration will be allocating some resources, but I'm not sure whether the KGs which need your help will really be assisted. Will they be given help in the positive direction, so that when one day we implement the recommendations, we can implement them immediately rather than having to wait for a long time? Secretary. Mr. Chairman, the salary scale, well, indeed, we have had a full discussion, and when we establish the committee, there will be a meeting before end of this month. 5 working groups will be set up under the committee, and one of the working groups will be focusing on resources. So there will be stakeholders joining the working group. We'll talk about the wastage, and we'll also talk about the question of pay. As to the second point, I think you're right to point that out. The committee must work quickly and must work hard. This is because we are talking about 900 plus kgs, and we have to understand that there is a lot of variations in terms of the mode of operation. Therefore, we really hope that we can carry out an analysis ASAP. What is important is that with the experience of the voucher scheme in the past few years, we understand that different KGs have different missions and modes of operation. So we want to sort of gather the information. $160 million have been mentioned. That would be a start. And in fact, a second priority area mentioned is the training of teachers. So again, we will be working on that soon. Mr. Chairman, SEN, for the drawing up of a KG teacher salary scale, when do you expect something can be done? Well, when we have a working group to look at the matter, I believe that the progress will be better. Sorry, time is up. Mr. Yip Kok Kim. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 questions. In the Secretary's speech, paragraph 10, he mentions the support for NCS students in learning Chinese. There will be $2 million being an extra provision each year to refine the summer bridging program for NCS students progressing to P4. SEN. For the NCS students, in particular the South Asian students, well, they are born in Hong Kong. I think it's a matter of written Chinese that they're encountering a problem. They encounter a lot of difficulties in the use of Chinese in writing, though they can speak quite fluently. So do you have any specific initiatives to make sure that such students can enhance their ability to read and write Chinese? In the North District, we do see a serious shortage of school places in the primary schools. I think the other day, the North District Council members have voiced very strong views, but it seems that you're only adopting stopgap measures. So do you have any long-term planning so that we can resolve the matter at root? Are you looking at building new schools, or are you going to increase the number of classes so that we can have additional school places? SEN. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, non-Chinese speaking students, for them to learn daily Chinese. Well, in fact, we are doing it at 3 fronts. In paragraph 10, we are adopting a focused approach. We know that if we ask them to learn to read Chinese, it would not be effective. They have to learn together with their family members, and they have to learn to speak and read Chinese in daily life. That would be effective. And secondly, we do have a collaborative scheme with the Hong Kong U. We are having a pilot scheme. We hope that we can check out the effectiveness of that scheme. That is, we give guidance to the students. And then, of course, they want to know more about their future career developments. As to the case of the North District, maybe the Undersecretary can give a reply. Mr. Chairman, for the North District school places, for cross-boundary students, I think they are exerting some problems on the matter of P1 admission. Well, in the year 2013, if North District school children are allocated a school place in Taipo, we are making arrangements to enable to take up a place in North District. At the same time, we are looking at the case of 2014. That is the allocation of P1 places. We have heard many suggestions, say, for example, whether there should be a new school net and whether there should be changes to the school place allocation system. We are looking at all the various options. But then we mustn't forget the question of equity and feasibility, as well as the transport support measures. Well, for the allocation system for 2014, we need to start the work in September this year. Therefore, our aim is to come up with a new scheme before September this year. We still need some time to carry out the in-depth study. Any follow-up? Gary Fan, thank you. 2 questions. First of all, 037 and 305. I think there were 4 visits last year, and then incurring $900,000 by way of airfare. But then when compared with what it was like before, the money was $630,000, though 8 visits. Probably the Bureau's explanation is that the visits were made to Canada and faraway places. But in fact, in the year 2009, Peru, Canada, and European countries were also the destinations. Why was it so exceptional? And what about the class of the seat? And have you controlled the expenditure? And what is it like this year? And then for non-local students, for 350. Now, every year, almost 9,000 non-local students study at our universities, taking up publicly funded degrees. And for graduate school, they outnumber us by 100%. Well, in fact, there was a review report saying that internationalization should become the major focus of development for all UGC-funded institutions. Yes, it has been said that there is autonomy for the institutions, but does it mean that you are going to turn a blind eye to it? Now, for internationalization, you want to enroll non-local students, but do you think that it is out of proportion in the sense that mainland students account for the large proportion? For the first question, who will answer this question? I'll answer the question. Well, for overseas visits, Well, mainly speaking, there are 2 points here. First of all, we have followed all the existing guidelines in carrying out the visits. Well, sometimes after a long-haul flight, we have to do work, and so we follow the existing guidelines. Sometimes we take the economy class, sometimes we take the business class. You mean first class or business class? Business class. Dr. Armour, the second question, please. Yes, the Secretary General.
Dr. Armour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. The admission to all levels of courses, programmes in our university sector is a matter of institutional autonomy and is based on merit. The geographical distribution of the students, especially in postgraduate programmes, is, if you like, immaterial to the merit-based application system, and that's the principal criterion by which students are admitted to our postgraduate courses in universities.
Yes, Michelle would like to say something. Oh yes, if I may supplement, Chairman. In 2011-12, non-local students came from 70 countries. If we're talking about PhD candidates, in the 4th round of PhD scholarship, we received 4,000 applications. They came from 106 countries. That's why I would say that our internationalization efforts are beginning to bear fruit. And in many programs, we have students coming from outside Hong Kong, other than the mainland. For example, Hong Kong UST, the non-local percentage would be diversified. That's their goal, to diversify their non-local students as far as possible. Mrs. Regina Yip. Well, the Secretary talked about different policy objectives, kindergarten education, and so on and so forth. They sound nice, but they're adopting policies which are going in the other direction, or which are not going to yield good results. I want to talk about 1467, 1468, and 1469. The New People Party advocates that we offer more overseas scholarships. We offer scholarships to local students to go overseas. But now you have taken on board on our policy, but the choice of subject is restricted to the English and pre-primary education. Chairman, do you know how to teach kindergarten? Although you have an MBA, your wife might know how to teach. Well, good academic results cannot be equated with good pedagogical skills. So we might as well spend the money to improve local kindergarten or local pre-primary education. And you also want to inject $5 billion to the language fund. Has the Education Bureau conducted any survey? We have the scholar for so long, and have you ever looked into how we can improve triliteralism and bilingualism? And also for PNET, although you are giving more resources, but in many schools they only have one, and they will just be giving you one class per week. How can there be any improvement? Secretary, when we nurture our talents through various means, we understand that in Hong Kong we need to train up a diversity of talents in different fields. But as a start, I would like to start with education. That's how we come up with the new initiative, and also in the near future. Apart from the scholarships, 80,000 or 85,000, we would try to look at particular fields where we can conduct further and more in-depth studies. And second, in the past we gave scholarships and that's it. Well, that's not the right way to nurture talent. In Singapore, they have a different approach, and we are going to improve our procedure so that we would like to nurture people who are interested in education. We'll do this right at the process of selection. And in the meantime, we will ask them to be involved in our education scene all the time. We hope that we can retain these people after their training is completed. As for the language fund, I would defer to my permanent secretary. First of all, of course, it takes many things to improve language competency. In the past 10-odd years, for international assessment tests, our standards have been improving quite substantially. Mrs. Regina Yip refers to the funding of $480 million for scholarships. Well, this is not done at the expense of another field. We haven't reduced our investment in teacher training. So it's not that we are taking away money from another field. But that's not what I was saying. You should either specify that you give scholarships to people if they pursue a degree in PhD on education. Dr. Kenneth Chan, I want to talk about 301, 302, EDB 301, EDB 302. While I teach in university, I don't know whether you agree with my observations. In the double cohort year 2012-13, there are a number of people who were qualified but could not be admitted to any bachelor degree program. If we're talking about A-level, 7,219. If a DSE, 13,040 qualified candidates who were nonetheless not given any subsidized or subvented place. Would you not agree that this is a fair policy failure? You are restricting the number of subvented places, and it's capped at 15,000. You are failing our students who have been working so hard and who are not getting any offer. And also, in the reply, in EDB 301, universities are encouraged to recruit students from the mainland and from other countries. Some will take out subvented places. For example, 3 years ago, there were 4,600 from the mainland, and for the 2012-13, 6,315 such students came. I support that we recruit from a wide variety of sources. But if we have so many students from other than Hong Kong, affecting the chances of locals being admitted, then I think we should look into this. So can I get a response from the Secretary? First of all, our policy direction is clear. We hope that before 2015 and 2016, over 1/3 of those eligible will be offer opportunities in degree courses, and the rest in tertiary courses. If we look at the number, it's 15,000 places, but there are other channels available, such as associate degree programs. We have increased the number offered to associate degree holders from 4,000 to 8,000. Thereby offering more opportunities. Well, I would like to interrupt you here. We have been told the same answer in our education panel meetings. So let's say I am a secondary school graduate. I am qualified, but you are saying that I should make a detour, wait for 1 or 2 years, so that I can make use of the places offered to associate degree holders. So why don't you go do it more directly? Increase the number of first-year places so that these qualified candidates can get admitted, can get their places in our universities instead of going to other places such as Taiwan. Well, under the reform secondary education system, we want to offer multiple pathways. So are you saying that you restrict the number of first-year places in order to have a diversified pathway? maybe you should allow the Secretary to respond first, Dr. Chan. We want to have people trained in different skills, and maybe they should have a chance to try to know more about the situation with different fields and different professions before pursuing an academic qualification. Are you going to increase the number of first-year places? Well, we're open-minded. We'll listen to views and look into this. Dr. Kwok Kake, $480 million has been used in a window dressing gesture to send people to get trained in overseas universities. And by doing so, you want to tell people that you attach importance to pre-primary education. In the 2012, for the 8 UGC-funded university, the competition is very stiff. So why don't you increase more bachelor degree programs in pre-primary education so that we can train up more the kindergarten teachers? Second, I asked whether there's any way to ensure that those graduates upon return to Hong Kong will be able to take up teaching in kindergartens. And I'm told that they would just be teachers if they don't get qualified as kindergarten qualified teachers. But we're talking about elites. And it seems that your people in different units don't talk to each other. Secretary, regard to the training of teachers in the tertiary sector, apart from the Hong Kong Institute of Education, there will be a 5th education faculty to provide more training opportunities. And of course, pre-primary education is just one of the fields. If you talk about the ratio of 1 to 16, but that's about the training program offered by the Hong Kong Institute of Education. Other subjects have different ratio. And also, we have a ongoing initiative to train people. When we want to train people, in particular, people who would work in the education sector. We hope that some $20 million will be used by the seed money to train people, and then they can take in other countries. And then they can take back the overseas practices here. Second point. Well, he doesn't know what I'm asking. What about these elite graduate teachers? If they don't qualify as graduate teachers, they cannot get any teaching position. Well, yes, we allow these people to get a degree qualification, and then they will return. And if they are qualified, if we're talking about 1 or 2 year programs which will qualify these people, they will also be allowed to apply. We have some provisional registration status. When after they return, they can also take part-time courses to make them fully professionally qualified. So there are different ways to do this. Special education. Answer 40 and 41. Well, we have seen a threefold increase in students with special education needs. For example, you are going to do more, the $12 million and $20 million to help these people with learning difficulties, but they are not going to be very helpful. So what kind of policy is this? Well, for SEN students, because of early assessment and early identification, we have seen higher numbers in recent years. We are considering conducting more research to try to work out solutions. Well, time is up. Perhaps you can supplement in writing. Mr. Tam Yu Chung, I want to follow up the question about overseas scholarships. You want to get elite students, good students, and help them get enrolled in overseas universities, and then when they return, they will be required to teach for, say, 2 years. Yes, it may be attractive because you're offering scholarships to be admitted to overseas prestigious universities, and then when they return, they can fulfill their side of the bargain, teach for 2 years, and then they will leave. Wouldn't that be a pity? What about relaxing the requirement that they get admitted in prestigious overseas universities? What about local universities? Would you be willing to subsidize them if they get enrolled in a local university? Maybe the chances are that they would become teachers. They are more likely to be teachers in the long run. And also, what about retention of teachers? For example, improvement to the teaching environment and other measures apart from the scholarship initiative. Secretary, let me say something about the principle, and then I'll defer to my permanent secretary to give you more details. Yes, it's important that we should find ways to keep the talent who has been trained. In my overseas visits, I contacted students coming from Hong Kong. In London, I met some students that they would be interested to come back to work in Hong Kong, and then the permanent secretary can give you more details. Mr. Tam's questions cover a few points. We already have scholarships to encourage people who are interested to work in the education sector to take a B.Ed degree. That they would be teaching English upon graduation. So why do we want to have this additional element of overseas universities? Because we know that people are very concerned about the English standards here in Hong Kong, and immersion is an important part in enhancing language proficiency. And that's why this new scholarship scheme would focus in the first instance in early childhood education and English language. And also the word we use is universities outside Hong Kong rather than overseas universities. If we want to cover more specialized areas, and it's always merits first, and we do not rule out offering more. And here, the scholarship scheme will only benefit 20 people. But, of course, it's a small number compared with the entire workforce. And some people may query that the elites may not want to work in education. Well, actually, many teachers are themselves excellent achievers academically. We want the 20. Well, it's not a big number compared with the entire teaching profession, but we also have local scholarships. Well, we're talking about a lot of investment for the 24 months to these scholars. Mr. Michael Chin. Well, I've seen a recent trend, and that is the elitist movement of general education. I have to declare my interest as a DSS school board member. 10% of school fees of DSS should be used for remissions. Say if there are 1,000 students, at least there should be 100 who are getting some remissions. But only 73, or half of the 73 DSS are using up to maximum amount. So theoretically, 4,100 students, or more than 4,100 students should benefit. And since this requirement has not been fully met, would you allow the unused school places in DSS be subject to the general allocation system so that we can make use of the full 10% of subvented places or the places with remission? When I was chairman of Scholar, many experts told us that the golden age for learning a foreign language is from the age of 4 to 8. So it's crucial that they get a good start in P1 and P2. Of course, it's difficult to cover. Kindergarten is not yet subsidized, but primary education is subsidized. One PNET school per school is not sufficient. We should get more, one more for each school.
If there are 2 PNETs in one school, then they can take up the English lessons of all P1 and P2 classes. And so students get in touch with people who use English as a mother tongue. And after P3, they can be taught by local teachers again. In fact, many experts buy into that kind of concept, and the extra resources should not be a lot. Have you considered doing this so that Hong Kong's English standard can be enhanced? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. First, the 10% school places and how they should be utilized. You remember that in DSS schools, there are some governance programs, and by the end of the year, we will have more information available. One of the points is particularly on this part, and we still have some time, and the PS can supplement in a moment. Second part, the PNET. Sorry, the first question. Will you consider assigning those places for allocation if they are not used up? You can say you can consider doing it. The 10% if the quota is not used up. Will you be happy to consider taking out those places for allocation? Well, I cannot say whether we will target that very point, but we will take an overall look of that 10%. Okay, then you can go on to the second question. Second question. Mr. Tian, you have mentioned this a few times, and I said that the Scholar would also like to seek more views to explore into the issue, because we also have $5 billion being injected into the language fund. If Mr. Tian, you place so much emphasis on this point, I think we should take this back to the Scholar for research. So you mean the Scholar is going to make education policies on your behalf? Is that your answer? Next, Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. My question has to do with 310 and 305 on non-local students. In 305, your reply is that from the mainland and reading UGC subsidized courses and subsidized undergraduate courses, the numbers reach over 8,900. Now, you want to internationalize our institutes, but then you are just mainlandize them. They are not internationalized, but mainlandized. My question is, since we are making use of taxpayers' money to subsidize these students, whether they be undergraduates or at EDB 310, the graduate courses, the people in graduate school, there are 2,000 to 6,000 of them reading MA or PhD in a taught course or in a research course. So they reach 60 to 70%. You want to internationalize our universities. I think we should put a cap on the number of mainland students in our universities so that the tail will not wag the dog, because now they take up 60 to 70% of the places and we are using taxpayers' money. Talk about powdered formula. You want to protect Hong Kong babies, and also you say Hong Kong property for Hong Kong people. Now at the graduate schools, I think the Bureau should also protect the interests of Hong Kong students. Will you put a cap on the number of mainland students in our graduate schools? There are 2 points. I would like to defer to the SG of the UGC about the proportion of mainland students.
I thank you, Chairman, and I thank the honourable member for her question. As I said earlier, the admission of postgraduates in particular to programmes in the UGC institutions is based principally on merit. The mainland applicants are very, very strong candidates for admission, and that's the primary criterion. I think that the universities and the UGC certainly devotes a lot of effort to securing better applications from all over, including Hong Kong. But principally, when it comes to the institutions and their autonomous bodies, they admit students on merit, and it's a matter of merit that the particular distribution of students is the way that it is, and that's how universities operate in most of the world. That it's a merit-based system, and mainland students are particularly attracted to coming to Hong Kong, and they're particularly capable, and that's why they get admitted to our institutions.
Sorry, the PS would like to supplement. Can I please ask my question first? You say students are admitted on merit. That is correct. That is right. But then the people in graduate schools are fully subsidized. If you look at other countries, if they admit non-local students, then the non-local students are charged much more. But then we use public money, and you open the door wide for everybody from around the world. And we gave them studentships, including subsistence and the fees for study. I think you should review the situation and set a cap to the number of those students. I hope members will not speak in a mixed code. You understand that I am talking to you, right, Dr. Wong? If you did not speak in a mixed code, I would not have to remind you. You do not have to ask me to assign them to answer, but I will ask them. 10 minutes, PS. Local students applying to read in the graduate school, the success rate is 25%, and the respective number for non-local students is only 9%. So you can see that when universities have the autonomy, they are not being biased towards mainland students. I think it is just a geopolitical situation that we receive more mainland students. In Singapore, for example, they have more students from Asian countries. That is why it seems we have one major source of overseas students. Actually, yesterday, the Bureau Secretary was officiating at the Hong Kong Scholarship ceremony, and we actually also have a part for Asian students. Your time is up, Mr. Raymond Chan. I'd like to follow up on questions 003 and 004. And that is the concern of many members today, and that is the government scholarship fund of $480 million. You have a quota of 20 per year. We think it is just a sleight of hand. You are not going to help much. You say people would be encouraged to read English and pre-primary education. So is it that local teachers are lacking in quantity and also in quality? You talk about diversity. You want to nurture teachers so they can come back and benefit students. But then at the same time, you should also increase resources for local training of teachers in the same areas of English teaching and pre-primary teaching. So if you have that kind of money, maybe you should use it locally, and that is a more effective way of spending your money. And also, these people would go overseas to study. Are you going to guarantee them a teaching place when they come back? What if they do not land a job when they come back? Say they read 3 years and then they are sacked after teaching for 1 year. After coming back to Hong Kong, do they have to give you back the $300,000 every year or the difference? What do I mean by the difference? If they don't go overseas, well, I have asked the question and you told me that locally you will have to fork out like $233,000. So heaven forbid, they do not land a job when they come back. So how much should they give back to government? And also, if they cannot land a permanent job but only act as a supply teacher or only teach on Saturdays, then does it mean that they have complied with the conditions of the scholarship? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. We do this mainly because, as the PS explained, we would like to provide another opportunity to nurture talent. And all over the world, people have the same problem in nurturing talent. That is why I emphasize that those who get the scholarship would receive special treatment, that there would be a special talent management system to manage them. One important point is that during the selection process, we would impress upon them the commitment they are making. And also, English teaching and pre-primary teaching sorry, Secretary, sorry, I did not want to barge in, but you are not answering the question. He was asking for detailed figures. Could you address the question? Yes. If people break the promise, if they do not comply with the contractual terms, well, I actually worked quite a lot on this in my previous job, so in future I can give you more information as to what they should do by way of compensating the government. You mean you would give the information in writing? Yes. Mr. Raymond Chan. Supposing the person on his own initiative doesn't want to teach, then that's different. But what if he is sacked? You will be answered in writing. Any other questions? If not, Mr. Yik Chi Ming, Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you. I'd like to follow up on questions already asked by members. 0290360099 and or 271. Students with special education needs. Dr. Helena Wong asked question 271, and there is a table. I like to look at the secondary school sector. There is a total of over $511 million for 2013-14, and each such secondary school will get less than $1 million. And if you look at the funding, I think it is not enough, so I will give you some examples. For example, school-based psychological counseling, 32 million for secondary schools, but then there are 519 schools in Hong Kong, so every school will just get $67,820. And if a psychologist will fetch $300 per hour, then each school will only get 23 hours per year. My own organization is subsidizing or supporting 11 schools in Hong Kong. In these schools, over 10% of them have been assessed to have special education needs, and so the number can be from 50 to 100. If each school will get only 23 hours, but you have 100 such SEN students in your school, then each student will only get 15 minutes. Do you think that is sufficient? I think you should consider giving more funding. Secondly, in the funding, you also have extra teaching hands for underperformers. In the next year, there will be over $30 million, and each school will get only $600,000. And if you want to hire more teachers, each school will only get 2 more teachers. And in Band 3 schools, students can perform quite differently. They can have one secondary 1 class with students at level P2 to P6. So just 1 more or 2 more teachers. Can they really help students with learning difficulties? Will you increase the funding in these 2 regards? I'd like to ask the Assistant Secretary to answer the question. Ms. Yip. Thank you. I'd like to talk about educational psychologists. We understand that educational psychologists are really very helpful in addressing the students with special education needs. We have a plan to expand the school-based psychological or school psychological service. Now the coverage is 60% vis-a-vis public primary and secondary schools. In the future, by 2016-17, we can expand to all public primary and secondary schools. In the interim, we will have a 10% annual increase. We will also expand the establishment of educational psychologists. It is not that we do not want to put in more resources, but every year there are not so many fresh graduates of education psychologists. We are working hard on this. Secondly, each education psychologist will serve about 6 to 10 schools, but we don't do it on a hourly rated basis. Educational psychologists will look at the different situations in the schools as to, for example, how many such students they have. Secondly, if there are really underperformers in certain schools, the present arrangement is, if it is a secondary school, if they have Band 3 students, if there is one class of Band 3 students, we will have 0.3 extra teacher for that class. If they have the 10 decile percentile, then we will have an extra 0.7 teacher for that class. Mr. Martin Liao, I'd like to follow up on my 2 questions. One, EDB 203. In 2001, the Hong Kong birth rate has started to drop, and mainland students have also dropped in number. At that time, the administration did the wrong population projection and built many new schools, and so there is an under admission, and so in the end you had to close schools. But then recently there are children born to mainland couples coming back to read their primary school. So has the Education Bureau reviewed the situation? Because I can see that you are slashing the funding for graduate teachers at primary schools and 2 other areas. I'd like to know, while you do that, will you affect the education at primary schools? And also in the next 5 years, would you have enough manpower to tackle this problem? The other question is EDB 204. You said that you would cut down on the civil service posts of janitors in public schools. But have you considered outsourcing the janitors' jobs and how that would affect the schools? Because many workers have said that the contract will go to the lowest bidder and the quality of service may be affected. And also, if you outsource the janitors' jobs, these janitors may not have a sense of responsibility or belonging to the school. And also, maybe the contractors will not provide enough training to the workers. And also, there may not be any monitoring on the integrity of the workers concerned. So I'd like to ask you how you seek to protect the interests of schools and students. P.S. Thank you. As for the slashing of posts in public schools, we subsume public schools and subsidized schools under the same allocation system. The subsidized schools are managers of their own schools, and they may not know what the other schools are doing. But then in public schools, all teachers are civil servants. And so they will not be told to give up their job. We will have regard to their age, and we will just go by natural wastage. So there is no impact whatsoever on the public school system. As for the janitors, the government has a well-established measure to manage contract workers. Therefore, you can rest assured, even if they are outsourced, the services are outsourced, they will still be under the management of the government. Next, Mr. Ip Kin Yun, I'd like to ask about secondary schools. EDB 081. Next year, there is a huge crisis for secondary schools to be closed off or for their classes to be reduced. Maybe not so in these 2 years, but then if you look at 2008 to 2011, altogether we have reduced 341 classes and we have lost 4 schools. This is when the situation was not so serious. And recently, the Bureau wrote to the schools to say that next year, in other words, in the scholastic year 2013, the vacancy would reach 3,600 at secondary schools. If you divide it by a class size of 34, that would equal to 106 classes. So the situation is serious. My questions are, This is our own mathematics. But what about the government? In the year 2013, how will classes be reduced at secondary schools? Can I have a figure? Secondly, what about closure of schools? And also, under the context of class reduction, there will be a high possibility of even schools to be closed. But then the administration has said that you would like to preserve schools, preserve teachers. Now, can you guarantee that there will be no schools that will be closed?
Secretary, Mr. Chairman, allow me to talk about the policy, and then the PS will give you the details. Preserving the stability and strength of the schools and the teaching force. It isn't just for the question of number of classes for the coming years. Further down the road, the number of students will increase. So we need to adopt a longer-term vision when it comes to planning. PS. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't give you the figures, Mr. Yip. This is because we have already said that instead of 34 students, there can be 25 students in a class. When there isn't any reduction in the class size, then there will be 34. And so a difference of 9 students when compared with 25. Say if we have 120, we can have 4 classes for a larger class, and then 5 classes for 25 each class. So it all depends on parental choice, and we have to wait for completion of the allocation. And we have already said that for 26 students, you can have 2 classes, on average 13 in a class. So if you do some simple calculations, and if you look at the standard class size and come to the conclusion that a certain number of classes will be reduced, then I'm afraid it is a far cry from the reality. Mr. Yip, yes, the Bureau will say that we can't just do the calculations in a simplistic way. Now, you know the figures. Do you have any projection? Have you got an assessment? And then the SEN, the Secretary has already said that he would like to preserve the strength of the schools. Can you guarantee that there would be no schools to be closed? Can you give a quick reply? We don't have a plan to close any schools. The schools have their own right to do anything about it. In other words, if schools don't commit suicide, you're not going to kill the schools. P.S. We haven't got a strategy to close the schools. Even if you have only 1 class, you can talk to us, and we have a lot of flexibilities. There can be different options in relation to development. Ms. Claudia Mo. Education takes up the largest chunk of the government expenditure, and it is rightly so. However, in terms of language training, we are still a failure. It appears that we have a lot of courses, a lot of new initiatives. It seems that it's a lively scene, but I'm afraid that they are but empty slogans. Just now, a lot of questions have been asked about $480 million to enable 20 outstanding students to go overseas, 20 of them. What about job seeking on their part? If they're not eligible to teach, what will happen? What if they are fired? Do they have to pay compensation to the government? It seems that you can't foretell the future. It seems that you just want to do something that is like a fanfare. I think for the move you are taking now, I think it is insulting the educators here. You are sort of casting a vote of no confidence to the IED. You have a lot of faith in the prestigious overseas universities. Yes, we know Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge. Now, you're spending a meager sum, $12 million, on special education. And on the contrary, you have this much for this scholarship. Now, reply 212, NCS, or rather, ethnic minorities are learning English. Now, for the NCS, it's all right for them to speak and to speak Chinese, but then when it comes to reading and writing Chinese, it is very difficult. But you still insist on not having Chinese as a second language. You won't have a curriculum for Chinese as a second language. I'm really surprised by your answer. You say that if we have a simpler curriculum and a lower standard, then we are reducing the opportunities. Of course, when it comes to second language, of course we expect it to be easier. The logic is that, yes, I know you are hungry, but if I give you a big meal, you will have indigestion. If I give you a small piece of biscuit, you can't fill your stomach. So I try to go by the middle of the road. Now, when it comes to second language, even when we teach English to a child, we won't say whether you are going to learn English so that you will go to Harvard University or you go to a building to become a security guard. Now, if English is our second language, we just continue to learn it and learn it properly. Why can't we do the same for the NCS in learning Chinese? P.S. We understand that NCS students have difficulties learning Chinese. Therefore, we want to start young for them. We want to work together with the parents. We want to support the parents. We welcome parents, in particular mothers, attending the courses at the same time. Scholar has 9 activities for children between 3 and 6, so that they have something lively, having drama, singing songs when they learn Chinese. Mr. Chairman, for those activities mentioned by Mrs. Chair, I know them very well. I just want to know why you can't have something more proper that is Chinese as a second language. Mrs. Chair, for 13-14, for the P1 school place education system, it will be changed. Well, since 2003, well, in fact, there are NCS who are in the first 1/3 of their class as far as achievement is concerned. We mustn't belittle them. We are now giving them subsidies to sit overseas examinations so that within the secondary school years, they are able to take internationally recognized examinations at different difficulty levels. It is related to $480 million for the elite students to go overseas. Mr. I'm afraid I can't praise you for this scheme, but to call it bluntly, it is neither fish nor fowl. I don't think that I can appreciate your scheme. In addition, I don't think that there will be anything good coming out of it. And in fact, on the contrary, there will be negative consequences. Well before it starts, it has already attracted a lot of criticisms. You must have heard it. And in fact, the educational sector has already said, why can't you give the money to the serving teachers instead of giving it to the elite students? Have you heard our suggestions? Is it like a case of old age living allowance? You will be stubborn, you don't change anything at all? I think at the public hearing, you have heard many teachers telling you what they think. They are most unhappy about it. They think that they have been overlooked, they have been discriminated. The government can't guarantee that the elite students who are awardees of the scholarship to get a job. You want them to finish 2 years' work. How can you be sure that they can guarantee a good teaching quality? Now, teachers are supposed to set an example for the students. Teaching quality will be important. Now, a good footballer may not always be a good coach. An elite student may not eventually become a good teacher. How can you guarantee that? Now, for the New People Party, it seems that they're saying that it was an idea from them. And even for Mrs. Regina Yip, she criticized you for that. She said that you have interpreted her idea wrongly, so you're asking for it. Mrs. Chair, a moment ago, said that we have already given different forms of in-service training to the serving teachers. Mrs. Chair, please understand, it is not the same. So why is it that the elite students have this scheme? What about the serving teachers? They're working hard and they're so silent, a majority. 160 teachers came to tell you what they think at the public hearing. They're committed, they're dedicated. Why can't you give the money to them? And I'm sure they will still be serving 8 years, 10 years down the road. They're dedicated young teachers. Why can't you select some of them and subsidize them to receive training overseas instead of this scheme? So, Secretary, would you like to listen to the views of the educational sector? Don't be stubborn. You can have no guarantee as to whether the elite students will become a teacher in 2 years' time. I think, on the contrary, you should give the money to the serving teachers who are excellent teachers. Let them be trained overseas. Secretary, well, you have to note that it is carefully worded. It's overseas. I also said overseas. Training. Teacher training programs, not necessarily degree courses. It can be a professional teacher training. So the definition is broad. I dare not dwell on it too much because we need to ask the committee to look at it. 20 scholarships, maybe some go to degree, some go to English language, others go to early childhood education. He hasn't answered my question. What about serving teachers? I think it can be considered. Now, if someone joins the scheme and try to become a qualified teacher, I think it can still be considered. Raymond Wong. Free KG education. Now, judging from this speech of the Secretary, he's saying that he would like to enhance KG education. Does it have a logical relationship with 15 years free education? Now, you're going to spend $160 million. In your speech, you have said that in accordance with the policy address in the year 2013-14, KGs under the pre-primary education voucher scheme will get an additional one-off grant. And then when it comes to free education, you say that in relation to the pledge made in the CE's election manifesto and the policy address, we've set up a dedicated committee in April to see how to practically implement free KG education. The committee will listen to stakeholders' opinions on the existing policy on KG education, identify issues for possible improvement, examine the various aspects of free KG education, and make practicable recommendations to the Bureau on the implementation of free KG education. Work will be completed in 2 years' time. If the committee can finish the tasks mentioned above in 2 years' time, does it mean that in 2 years' time you can have free KG education, Secretary? Thank you. Thank you, Member, for the question. Well, specific recommendations in 2 years' time, and then we have to follow the established procedures. Since we have the participation of the practitioners, I don't think it will take a long time to implement the recommendations. We hope that we can start the implementation soon. Mr. Chairman, be it the KG teachers or the KG student parents, I think their views are most clear. Last time there was a public hearing. Secretary, you were in attendance, and our chair also chaired the meeting. Everybody was clear about the aspiration. Now, the committee's recommendations, will they be taking the lead? And what about the interests of the stakeholders? Which will be given priority? You will be spending 2 years' time on this matter. Well, the Alliance to Fight for Free KG Education has given a lot of suggestions. All of them are practically implementable. So please name a year. 2017, 2015, 2016. I think it's an easy question to answer. Chairman, please ask him to give a reply. Secretary, do you have a timetable for free KG education? Well, the committee has been set up. In 2 years' time, it will finish the work. Maybe they don't need 2 years. Maybe before 2 years have expired, they will come up with recommendations. We study their recommendations. There will be an open discussion and then implemented all in one go or in phases. We leave it in the hands of the committee. And then for the other views of the alliance, we have already collected them. We have also heard other views. 30% of the students study at full day or whole day KGs, while 70% half day KGs. There are different views. We will collect all of them. I can assure members that we are also anxious. Mr. Chairman, I've got 10 seconds left. I hope the Bureau will come up with a very specific timetable. Secretary, anything, PS, anything to add? Well, we have to be realistic. School premises, 700 kindergartens under the voucher scheme, 900 in total. We have to look at the question of school premises before we can have free KG education on a fair basis. It is too early to talk about the timetable. We really need to look at the road map. We have to understand and find out how many barriers that have to be overcome before we can give an answer. Mr. Mock, 225. Reply 225. Something close to my heart, that is the supply of manpower in relation to the IT sector. Now, young people, children are very good at using computers, but it seems that they're not interested in taking up IT as their tertiary studies. I have talked to computer teachers in primary schools and secondary schools. Now I have come to get some ideas about it. They are telling me that starting from primary school, junior secondary and senior secondary, well, it seems that the curriculum is truncated. They are not a continuum. I won't go into the details, but then when they move on to DSE, and later on, when they move on to universities, the problem will be aggravated. Now, the trend is such that in America, in Europe, and Obama, in his State of the Union speech, made it a point to say that programming should be incorporated into the curriculum of primary schools and secondary schools. So you don't just have knowledge about IT, you need to know how computers work. And then in this way, you can apply the knowledge and then it will help with innovation. So my question is, can the Bureau take an overall view, that is, can you re-examine the subject of computer education so that you have a reform about it and have some innovation? Many frontline teachers are saying that they have a hard time. They want to have adequate computer assistance, just like the laboratory assistants, so that the computers will be taken care of by a skilled person or specialist. PS or Secretary? There are a number of points here in two regards. IT education or technology education. We shouldn't just set our eyes on software or hardware. We have to take everything into account. Later on, DS5 will also supplement. What I want to say is that for the second question that you asked, Mr. Mock, we talked to many school sponsoring bodies. They're saying that if they have got one or two assistants, it is not of much help. They need hardware, they need Wi-Fi. Sorry, I have to use the term Wi-Fi in English. So we have to take everything into account. We are trying to get a new mode of operation. Maybe DS5 can answer this question. Mr. Chairman, we are looking at the subject of technology education under NSS, the new structure. But then we're also looking at the case of junior secondary education. We are going to have a review, and then we will certainly bear in mind what members have said. So you're going to adjust the curriculum as far as computer is concerned. No, it's about technology education. Yes, I agree. It isn't just a matter of recruiting more people, but at least you have to admit that you need to do something about it. Next, Mr. Chen Kin-bo, 063. Is Tommy Jones' question about international school places. It is said that 2,500 more places will be available. Now, please understand that for overseas companies, whether they would like to choose Hong Kong as their regional headquarters, they want to be sure that the senior staff members can get school places for their children. Now, recently, I have talked to such senior staff members of overseas companies. They have told me that the lack of such school places has become the greatest barrier in recruitment of young professionals from overseas. 2,500 may not be adequate. So international school places is an important issue and something for the long term. Please find effective ways to increase the number of school places.
Recently, German Swiss has successfully converted a former primary school into new premises for their use. It's now very beautiful, and it actually gives you a feeling that you are in a foreign country. So my question is about the long-term planning on the part of the administration to make sure that we have sufficient supply of international school places. Well, we do have some places, but we need to get more suitable premises. There's a mismatch. And Secretary, you used to work in the manpower field. You should understand that this has become a big issue. Secretary, well, this is a very timely question. A few days ago, we issued a paper to the education panel of this council regarding our findings on the provision of international school places. The same paper has been given to the Education Commission. In the coming few years, we need some 4,000 new places. Today, if you read the paper today, that we have just allocated 3 sites, make 3 sites available for development by international schools. Details can be discussed at the future meeting of the education panel. We're going to meet the chambers of commerce in the future. We'll discuss things such as the increasing communication or enhanced communication between the business community, the education sector, and the general public. Well, I hope you can actually increase the provision. All right, then I thank the Secretary for your answer, and I thank Mr. Chen for asking this follow-up question on my behalf. Mr. Leung Kok-hong is not here, then we have Dr. Fernando Cheung. My question is about support of non-Chinese students. It's mentioned in the Secretary's opening remarks. Some $2 million additionally will be provided to help NCS students to be involved in summer bridging programs, and their parents will also be involved. It's important to involve parents of NCS students. There should also be dedicated programs for parents, and if the parents can learn Chinese, they will be in a better position to help their children to learn Chinese. I understand such programs are available in the community, and they have proved to be successful. I'm glad that you are going to provide funding for this, but I hope you can provide more. As I've said, it's important to provide more support to parents as well. All along, these students have been asking for the establishment of Chinese subject as a second language with suitable assessment criteria set. It's in the CE's election manifesto that this is going to be done. If we don't have the right policy support or the right curriculum to cater to their needs, we have many NCS students who are now in secondary schools. If we want to allow them to catch up to the DSE level, so that ethnic minorities can overcome their difficulties in getting admission in the tertiary education. This is a big hurdle that requires a lot more to be done. Since this is a promise by the CE, when are you going to deliver? I think the same question was asked by Ms. Claudia Mo. It was answered by the Permanent Secretary. Would you like to take this question, Secretary? I'll defer to the Permanent Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Let me talk about the curriculum first. Some 10 years ago, we have so-called syllabus A for English language, but it was not highly recognized. Therefore, both students and employers didn't regard that paper as valuable, and so it was scrapped later. If we have a similar thing for Chinese language for ethnic minorities, we have to consider whether the exam result will be well recognized. Is it going to be helpful? We only got 1,300 ethnic minority students taking Chinese language, and will such a special subject be recognized internationally? Maybe we should consider other alternatives such as GCSE, IGCSE, ordinary level, GCAS level, and GCA level, and then DSE. All these examinations offer Chinese language, with different degrees of difficulties. We hope that they would take the intermediate examination and then proceed to more difficult ones, so they can keep on overcoming the challenges. Well, I understand the point. Perhaps we can let the Permanent Secretary finish first. But my time is up. I'll let her finish. For non-Chinese students, many of them have mothers who were immigrants from South Asia. That's why we want to involve the programs, involve the parents in the programs. Because involving these parents do not involve a lot of marginal cost. And through Home Affairs Bureau, we have been in dialogue with these organizations representing the ethnic minorities. We try to understand their preference, their needs, and we would like to do more to encourage them to get immersed in the learning of Chinese. Last summer, I spent quite a few days in meeting these NCS students. They have been doing well. Their Chinese essays are sometimes even better than local students. I have full confidence in them. If I may be allowed a very short follow-up. Okay, it seems that we are going to have a second round. I'm not going to ask another question. This is a follow-up. This is how the Bureau sees it. But the local curriculum and the local assessment criteria are such that these have become a major obstacle for the ethnic minorities to get admitted to the tertiary sector or to get employment. Because international examinations are not well known to employers. So we might as well return to what the CE promised in the manifesto. I hope more concrete steps will be taken to deliver the promise. Secretary, well, you are correct, Dr. Zhang. We have been engaging them in a dialogue, in an in-depth dialogue. First of all, what do they want? Day-to-day conversation. Second, they want to look at employment, and then third, progression to tertiary education, where employers do not require a high level of language proficiency. So if we can do something to let employers know the level of proficiencies, perhaps that can be helpful. Mr. Christopher Chung. It's about 070. As I believe, there will be free pre-primary education to be implemented, and you will be implementing the pre-primary education voucher scheme. I hope this would encourage people to have babies. After the implementation of free pre-primary education, what about cross-boundary pupils? Can they be given a voucher as well? Because we are seeing if we have tens of thousands of pupils coming to Hong Kong and returning to the mainland on a daily basis, there will be pressure on our boundary checkpoints and on the schools and kindergartens in the North District. Can the voucher be used across the boundary? Secretary, if the children were born in Hong Kong, they can be part of the system, part of the voucher scheme. They can use the voucher. As for the issue of portability, well, we require more discussion before we can consider doing it. Well, they are children of Hong Kong residents. They are Hong Kong residents. These children are Hong Kong residents. And for various reasons, they are not living in Hong Kong. They cannot reside in Hong Kong. And if they are given different treatments, wouldn't that be a problem of fairness? How do you respond to that? Well, it's complicated. We need to conduct an in-depth study. It's not just about kindergartens or pre-primary education. It's the same with primary education. In the coming 3 or 4 years, what's in your estimation that kindergarten students in the right age group will come over to Hong Kong for kindergarten? And how many of them will get pre-primary education on the mainland? We have some basic data, but we need to gather more data. Well, we know how many babies were born to mainland parents, and we need to get hold of the data of regarding how many of them will come back to Hong Kong for education. It's them that we are grouping in the dark. Well, it's not that. It's difficult to get hold of specific and reliable data. And I'm speaking from my experience as a member of the education panel. Well, the data are not real-time data because they would start to be enrolled in kindergartens when they are 3 or 4. In recent years, we have been monitoring the situation. We have been looking at the data to see whether we should make some adjustments. Regarding portability, well, say if a local student, a local permanent resident, emigrating to Canada, do we give them the same voucher? So we need to have regard to the bigger picture. Under what circumstances would the child be eligible to the voucher, and under what other circumstances he's not? This is a complicated issue. We need more time to investigate. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, a question for the Secretary. Who gave you this idea of training the teachers by offering them scholarship? Who gave you this idea, or did you think it out yourself? Well, it's through consultation with the relevant sector. They put this request to us. They ask why people have the feeling that the teaching profession it's the last choice. If they have any other choice to enter other professions, they won't want to become a teacher. Well, I asked this question because there was a pledge in the CE's manifesto, and he garnered votes, and now he had to do something to pay back these people $480 million. Well, I understand your point that the professional status is not high. You want to give these people a professional status or qualification, and then you offer them the requisite pay, terms of employment, and status and long-term employment. So how can you help by just asking them to do a stint of 2 years? How can you cannot ask, say, an elite footballer to sign a 2-year contract. Barcelona won't do this with Mace. If you want to enhance the standard of a profession, of a sector, you must do it in the overall term for the practitioners generally. Second question. You said the increase in the funding for education is now smaller than the past. That's a fact. You want to do so many things. Pre-primary education is already a big enough headache for you. That's why I ask you to get more resources. I think, well, you are a parent yourself. If you ask your wife that I want to have 9 splendid dishes, your wife said that can't be done. And can you say that I'll just get $20 and I will get them myself? Well, this is a lousy idea. $480 million to train elite students into teachers. Your bureau is responsible for everything in education, and education is a very important part of the CE's manifesto. He compares nurturing talent as growing trees. That takes many years. Well, you cannot achieve a goal by cutting the budget of the department responsible for it. How can you accomplish what you set out to accomplish without resources? Ms. Priscilla learned. Well, we have been asking for a 15-year universal and free education system. I want to follow up on the reply, serial number 008. Is about liberal studies and the expenditure. According to your reply, the grant to support liberal studies can be utilized flexibly by the school. It can be used for the networking, the developing program, and so on, and curriculum support materials, and so on. The PTU has come up with education materials to explain what is about the impending Occupy Central campaign. Would that be used as teaching material by schools? I've received an inquiry from a student. What if the student tears up the material, since this is against the law? It's against the law to occupy Central. Would he fail in liberal studies as a result? because liberal studies would cover the rule of law. So what do you think, Secretary? Dr. Benny Tai, who was involved in compiling the liberal study learning material in question, is that a kind of brainwashing? Since Dr. Tai is also advocating the Occupy Central campaign. And for this year's DSE liberal studies subject, there are compulsory questions. You have this comic, a big stone representing the pro-establishment members pressing or crushing on the pro-democracy members. All right, you may say that this is a compulsory learning subject, and teachers may have different political affiliation.
But should we only teach politics in liberal studies? Not every student is talented in this area, and if he doesn't get good grades, he will not be able to get into Hong Kong U because he doesn't get an A in liberal studies. Why do you want the tertiary institutes to also count the performance in liberal studies? Why don't you just allow students to learn in liberal studies without subjecting them to an examination? Because students are really at a loss. They don't know. Do they have to recite the entire book by Benny Tai? Do they have to recite all the editorials in newspapers? I'd like you to tell me how you are going to handle this. Secretary, is it you who would answer? I would state the major principles and then I would defer to the PS. First, there are a few important points. Liberal studies is a compulsory subject and it has the few requirements. First, diversity, and teachers and schools should provide the information. No. Liberal studies is not a political subject. Can you address that point directly? Can you not include politics in liberal studies? First, it must be diversified, and schools can have its own consideration. Sorry, your time is up. Are there members who are here but who have not got a first round? Would you like to ask questions in the first round? With regard to the time left, we have 5 members having pressed the button. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, you'd like to ask a question? First round? Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Chairman, I have this question for the Secretary. In Hong Kong, there are many ethnic minorities. Some funding has been given to schools to help them learn Chinese. But there are many schools in Hong Kong which are not catering to the needs of the different ethnic minorities in Hong Kong. Let us look at examples in other countries like the US. The schools there would not teach Chinese, Spanish, French, and English. They only teach the national language, and the other languages are taught as a second language. But in Hong Kong, we use both English and Chinese, and those are already the compulsory subjects. Now, what do we do with the rest? Is the US example an example that we can follow? And I'm not just talking about the US, but also other advanced countries. So what resources are we going to put aside to help non-Chinese speaking students so they can integrate into society? Secretary, can you explain how you're going to make the best use of resources? Can I defer to the PS? Thank you, Mr. Lam. You're correct. Chinese and English are compulsory subjects in our schools. Well, it depends on the composition of students in schools. We have got funding that can be flexibly used. In some schools, if they have a large proportion of NCS students, these schools are already making the best use of resources. For example, if there are Filipino students and Southeast or South Asians in the schools. They would conduct extracurricular activities like ethnic dancing and drama production. So students will be able to learn about one another's culture after school hours. And if they have a good parent-teacher association, even parents are involved. These are the successful examples, even if they are not that many. Therefore, in the years to come, we would like to communicate more with parents and these ethnic groups. We are concentrating on the difficulty they have in learning Chinese, but actually from another angle, this is also a great culture resource for Hong Kong. So we have the same thinking, Mr. Lam, and because of time constraint, I think we can take that up with you in more detail in future. Chairman, before you can really resolve the entire problem, there are voices saying that the administration is not doing anything for them. They say they would like to integrate in society, but they do not know Cantonese. We may need a transitional program. These students are dispersed around the districts. What are you going to do in the transitional period? Well, I can talk about the transition briefly. First of all, we have commissioned the VTC to provide vocational English training for students who have left school. Secondly, you are also correct. Indeed, the situation vis-à-vis ethnic minorities is not the same amongst the 18 districts, and the scholar has identified 4 districts for 9 programs to be conducted for children between the age of 3 to 6. I think district councils are also doing their part. Mr. Tan Ka-Piu, the speech seems to concentrate on support for SEN students, including the building of special schools. Now, I would go back to my community, which is Tung Chung, and I like to declare that I am an elected member from the Islands District. Starting from 2005, the administration has put aside $100 to $200 million to build a special school with hostel facility in Tung Chung. Now we are in 2013. What is the progress? There is consensus in society that the school should be included as part of the building program for 39 blocks. Earlier on, the Community Care Fund has started a full textbook subsidy for students, and it is said that that would include a meal allowance. In many schools, if students do not get full subsidy, they are saying that at least half the subsidy for textbooks should be allowed. Number 3, in the new senior secondary curriculum, S5, S6, students can take practical courses and spend a day in vocational orientation, but they lack the traveling expenses, because in remote communities like Tin Shui Wai and Tung Chung, they may not want to go to the Institute of Chinese Cuisine in Pok Fu Lam. It is not that they don't like it, but they cannot afford the traveling. Secretary, can I ask the PS to answer? Thank you. On Tung Chung Special School, I think we have met about it. You understand the site has been changed because of certain problems with the community. We are following up with the engineering aspect, and later on we're going to submit the plan to the district council. But in principle, we have planned for a special school to be built in Tung Chung. As for the meal allowance to be given out of the Community Care Fund, we understand that is a voice being expressed, but this is just a pilot, and we want to concentrate on the most needy students who are reading full-day schools. As for the practical courses, we actually had some communication before. We are looking at how resources should be used. If many students in a school take these courses, I think one compromise is actually to get the training bodies to go to the school. If you have a dozen or so students taking a course, then in fact they should not travel but have the course delivered to them. But of course, if it's just 1 or 2 students, the situation is different. We'll have to get in touch with the schools to see what the situation is. P.S. The most ideal way is to gather students from a few schools together, but sometimes schools are not aligned that way. And if you provide the training in school, students might not be initiated to a vocation. I only have 20 seconds more. Do you have a timetable for building the special school in Tongchong? Can you do the consultation with District Council in the first half of the year? Can I defer to the DS? Mrs. Ip. We will have to do the follow-up. Do you have a timetable? Yes or no? We will do our best. If there is the green light, we will do it ASAP. Even if we get a yes, as the PS said, we have to do the feasibility study and other studies. There will still be some lead time. Members, 5 more members would like to ask a question in the second round. Any more members? We should end this session by 5:30. I wouldn't like to extend it by too much. This morning we had a good trial, and 5 members who have pressed the button should speak only for 1 minute each, and you should ask all your questions, and then the Bureau can take up all the questions at one go. Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. EDB 008. Liberal Studies funding. 320,000 for each school. This will also be available in 2012-13. My question is, what about after 2013? If you stop the funding, how will that impact on the implementation of liberal studies in schools? Secondly, EDB 269. No, it should be EDB 270, National Education. Can you tell me more about the exchange program for teachers and students, the name list, and also whether these 14 officials would make their rounds to primary and secondary schools to see how national education is being taught? Ip Kin Yun 086, Liberal Studies. In the answer, whether the support subsidy would continue, there is no clear indication. Well, it is like that you are not going to continue with the subsidy. However, in the schools, we see that they are heavily reliant on that subsidy. So why is it that you are going to stop the subsidy? We can see that most schools are using the funding to ease the pressure. We know that teachers have to make use of the resources to come up with their own materials. And I think please come to the question because there is not much time. Well, I think I have asked the question already, and that is whether you would continue or consider continuing with the subsidy for liberal studies. Next, Dr. Fernando Zheng. I'd like to ask about integrated education. In your speech, you said that the cap of subsidy has been raised from 1 million to 1.5 million, depending on the number of students who have special education needs. And there will be 10,000 to 20,000 per head. But schools do not automatically get more money. Now, we have visited these schools in the past, and students and principals did tell us that they lacked resources. I'd like to know why the Bureau does not get more resources to provide more support to these schools. Like educational psychologists, the resources still spread very thin. In your answer, we can see that one education psychologist has to go to 6 to 10 schools, And one such expert we met had to go to 13 schools. Next member, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Again, Secretary, how much more money would you like? The last meeting was 2 or 3 weeks ago. You say you do not have enough money for pre-primary education and you don't have money for anything else. So how much more money are you considering to secure? We cannot give you more money. You have to say you need more money. So can you give me a ballpark figure so we can vote in support of you? I really want to give you money. Okay, he will answer you in a moment. I'm asking him to do his mathematics. Members have been talking about money. Please do your sums and let us know how much more you have. Miss Priscilla Leung, I will continue with my last question. I have never agreed that liberal studies should be equated with politics. We have secondary schools which are Protestant or Buddhist, but later on we might have secondary schools which also teach Occupy Central. However, you should give students a choice. 3 years ago, I think the PS has heard this. There was a student who complained against a teacher who used off-color language to teach politics. And that was a complaint against a teacher. If students do not agree with Occupy Central, what is your question, Priscilla Leung? My question for the Secretary is, if someone wants to complain against the use of that kind of teaching material, what is the mechanism? And sorry, your time is up. Your time is up. Ms. Leung, your time is up. Secretary. There are 5 questions. Yes, Chairman. Number 1. When liberal studies started to be taught, the Bureau said that there would be the addition of 0.1 teacher for each school. And if you don't go for an extra recruitment of teachers, you could use the money in a flexible way. This is the background. And the 160,000 and 320,000 actually are for the starting of that special subject. And as I said, if other subsidies are required, schools have to come up with a justification. And we have to revive the discussion of the 0.1 teacher subsidy. As for national education teaching and exchanges, we have said clearly that we will not do our rounds at schools anymore. There will be no such thing. Number 3, integrated education. $1 million to $1.5 million. We have talked to the sector and therefore we have enhanced it. We understand that if there is a need, we can continue to study the issue to see whether there is a need to do more. Another point, educational psychologists. As we said, we would like the coverage to be expanded. But the limitation is imposed on us because of the lack of professionals. This is the biggest barrier. And then pre-primary education, how much more money we need? We will set up the working group ASAP, a working group on resources, and then we'll make the right strategies. No, he is not asking about pre-primary education. Because many members are telling you that you should have more funding for many different areas of your work. So it's not just pre-primary education. He started with pre-primary education. No, his final question was whether you need more money. Well, never mind. I am repeating the question on your behalf. Members should not speak anymore. Secretary. Actually, we don't only look at pre-primary education. We are also promoting other initiatives. In my speech, I have mentioned many different areas which would require funding. We will make our preparation for securing funding appropriately. P.S. Because of a drop in student population, the education percentage vis-a-vis government expenditure has dropped. However, I'd like to tell members that the per capita injection has actually increased. Let me talk about primary schools. In the past 4 years, the per capita injection has risen by 43%. Even compared to last year, it has risen by 3.7%. For secondary schools, 30.4% in the past 4 years. Sorry, PS, it is not that I don't want you to make a statement, but I hope you will answer questions. Please answer questions. Well, so the brief answer is we are making use of the funding in an appropriate manner. So we'll have to see where the money is required before we know how much more we need. Ms. Priscilla Leung is asking about a complaint mechanism against liberal studies. Well, if Ms. Leung has those complaint cases, please refer them to us. Where? Ms. Leung, please do not speak, all right? Because I have already stopped other members. Well, given your example, if students are not happy with the teachers, or the teaching materials, I wouldn't ask any, or I wouldn't like to see anybody tearing up teaching materials because Hong Kong is diversified. But if a student has another view, maybe he or she should speak up so that there is diversified discussion. Should the student complain to the education department? Well, I would first of all encourage the student to complain to the teacher or parents or even principal. They can go to the Parent-Teacher Association. If it is not resolved, we have a complaint mechanism, and in the end, the bureau will be the gatekeeper. Okay, that's all for this session. The next one will start at 5:40. We have a break of 10 minutes.